Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I am super excited to be talking with you guys about everything that I read during the month of May. Alright, so hopefully this filming location is okay. I was just feeling a very cozy setup. My bedroom is coming together. I think I'm actually going to do a cozy bedroom tour for you guys because it is very bookish, as you can see, maybe. I have 3 bookshelves behind me, and this is kind of a mix of to be read as well as like all my series. So I have read most of the books that I have in series form. But yeah, the house is coming together, so do let me know if you are interested in seeing more lifestyle stuff. I feel like my lifestyle kind of videos don't always do the best, but I do think it is fun, at least for me as someone who loves to watch YouTube and booktube. I like when I can kind of get to know the person who is creating the content a little bit more than you typically can in these types of videos. So yeah, maybe just 1 or 2 more like lifestyle vlogs a month. I am going to be filming a kind of June reset, even though it's already June 5th, but basically just like a day in my life where I go to a new library and get some stuff done. So yeah, that will be the next upload, and hopefully you will enjoy that. But for now, let's get into what you clicked on this video for, which is talking about all the books that I read during May. So honestly, when I went to my shelf and pulled out everything that I had read this month, I was quite surprised. I did end up reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books, and I just felt like I didn't read that much. I felt like I was kind of in a bit of a reading slump. There were a couple books that I think could definitely be 5-star reads. One was A Gentleman in Moscow, and the other was the 3rd book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I started both of them and I just wasn't feeling them, and because I knew I wasn't in the right mood, I decided to put them down and just save them for when I'm feeling it more. I'll talk about it more in like my summer TBR, the 10 books that I really want to get to over the summer months, but I feel like I'm very much in a reality mood. Like, historical fiction does sound good to me, but I'm feeling a lot of like literary fiction, and I'm not always in the mood for that, so I'm gonna be diving really into those kinds of books this summer. And I always do love to read thrillers. I'm very much itching to start a new thriller today. But yeah, I did read 1, 2, 3 thrillers this past month to kind of help me get out of this little reading rut. So that is my suggestion to you. No matter what you picked for your TBR, no matter what you hoped you would read, if you have just not been feeling like reading for some reason, don't force yourself to read a certain book unless it's for school or something. Just go back to your favorite genre, maybe go to a reread, maybe listen to something on audiobook, and just go with the flow, because reading is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a chore. But alright, long intro over. I can tell I'm in a chatty mood today. The first book that I did read during the month of May is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. I think this is maybe my 3rd or 4th book from the author, definitely at least 3rd. And I think I said it in another video where like I think I have the misfortune that I've read my favorite book from this author so far first. This one and the last one I read have not like been uber amazing to me. This one I did give 3.75 stars. This was kind of the typical, like, the main character maybe has a little bit of a substance abuse problem, so you're not quite sure what to believe, which I feel like has just been quite overdone at this point. And that's not necessarily to say that this book is like copying or whatever, because it's been out for a while, I think. Yeah, this has been out since 2016, but I just feel like so many thriller authors use that trope, I guess. But I did like the fact that this book is set for the most part on a boat. I just like books that are set on boats. And there were a lot of twists throughout. I for sure did not see all the twists coming, but I remember as I was reading it, the middle dragged a little bit for me. But again, I was in a little bit of a reading slump this month, so that might be a little bit more my fault than the actual books. One thing that I did note in my Goodreads review, which I love to post on Goodreads mostly so I can like remind myself of what I thought about books right after I finish them. And so if you want to know what I'm reading in real time, definitely make sure to follow me on Goodreads. I am quite consistent with that. But I said I did like that at the end of each part because I think the book was broken into maybe like 4 or 5 parts. I liked that there was like a news article or email or just a different form of storytelling at the end of each part. So I really, really liked that. That's kind of an automatic notch up in my book, pun intended, I guess, when authors just get a little bit creative and have an atypical way of telling a story. Now we have a book that was a little bit of a surprise to me because I would not have bought this myself. I probably would not have picked this up at the library myself, but I was sent this book in a mystery box last year, and so I decided to give it a shot. And that is Trust, which actually did win the Pulitzer Prize, and I do think it was very well deserving of that award. So this is a really, really cool story, I think. Like I was saying a few moments ago, I love when books are told in an atypical way, and that's exactly how this book went. So this book follows a very successful Wall Street tycoon and his wife, but it's told in 3 different ways and you don't quite know what's real until the end. And I did like that the author wrapped it up at the end so you knew what was real or what was not. But the first third of this book is another book, so we've got a book within a book setting, and that story is based off of the life of this big Wall Street tycoon and his wife. Oh, I'm sorry, this is actually 4 different parts. One of them is quite small. So the second part, which is quite small, is from the real person, the real Wall Street tycoon. Not a real person in real life, but a real person in this story. It's excerpts from his memoir, so it's a lot of like disjointed paragraphs because it was never actually completed. So that one was kind of fun to read because, again, just a very atypical way to tell a story. And then the third part is a memoir remembered, so it is written by a woman who was helping the Wall Street tycoon write the memoir. So that second part is what she was working on with him, and she's remembering what it was like to work with this guy. So at this point in the story, you're finding out more and more about this guy's personality, which may or may not match up very well with the person that was written about in the first part. Hopefully this is all making sense. I promise that this is one of those stories that it is a lot, but it's not confusing. It requires your brain power, but if you just read it and you pay attention, you're not going to be confused. And then the last part is also very, very short, and it's extremely telling, and it is coming from the diary of the wife. So I feel like I did a really bad job explaining this book, but if you do like historical fiction, if you are interested in this period of like the 1920s, if you like atypical stories, if you like a little bit of a mystery, because the whole time I'm like, what's real, what's not? Is this guy being truthful? Is the novel within the book truthful? Is the woman who worked on the memoir being truthful? You don't really know any of that until the last few pages. So I would highly recommend, and this is one that I definitely think I will reread in the future, and I did give it 4.5 stars, but honestly, I feel like this could have been 5 stars. Looking back, I think this one will stay with me for a long time. Oh, I said the only reason I really didn't give it 5 stars is just because during certain parts of the book, there is a lot of like Wall Street talk, a lot of like financial district explanations, which is not particularly interesting to me. So I had a hard time getting through some of those parts, but truly it is a 5-star book. Next up, we have a story from Lisa Jewell, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I think this might only be the 3rd book I've read by her, but I've really, really enjoyed everything I've read. So this is The Truth About Melody Brown, and I think this is actually one of her older ones when she wrote a little bit outside of the thriller genre. Yeah, this is from 2009. I think she might have written a little bit more family drama, even a little like chick lit light, but there's absolutely still a good bit of like mystery to this story. It's just not as intense as a thriller as she writes now. So I'll just read the blurb because I think it's going to do a better job than I can. It says, Melody Brown can remember nothing before her 9th birthday. Now in her early 30s, Melody lives in the middle of London with her 17-year-old son. She hasn't seen her parents since she left home at 15, but Melody doesn't mind. But when fragments of her past reemerge, she slowly begins to piece together the real story of her childhood. With every mystery she solves, another one materializes. With every question she answers, another appears. and Melody begins to wonder if she'll ever know the truth about her past. So yeah, a little bit more of a family drama, but I really liked that this was split between two different time periods. It's split between 1979 and now, which would be about 2009. And even though, yeah, not as intense as some of her other ones, I was very much hooked throughout, and I did end up giving this 4.5 stars. It's also not a super long book, so this would be a great one to just read, binge read on a weekend day or just whatever day you have off. Beach read since it's summer. Then I did read another thriller, and that is Karen McManus's You'll Be the Death of Me. And Karen McManus writes some pretty good, I would say, young adult thrillers. I would say, not that I've read a ton in that genre, but I'd say I enjoy her really only second to Holly Jackson, who wrote the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series and some other standalones that I've really enjoyed. You might have heard of the One of Us is Lying series by this author. I think there are 3 in that, and I need to reread the first one, maybe second one, can't remember if I ever actually read that, and I do need to read the third one. I've got them all on my shelf back there, so that will probably be like a fall series, I think. I have read, I think, 2 other standalone books from this author besides this one, so this is like my 4th or 5th one from the author, and I will say this was personally my least favorite. Just the story overall was not my favorite. I did end up giving it a 3.5 stars, and I don't think I probably have given any of her other ones less than 4 stars, and it did have a promising start because it kind of starts off a little bit like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There are these 3 friends who they were super close, like in 8th grade and early high school, and now they're at their end of their high school career. They've kind of drifted apart. They all have their different personalities, and they decide to ditch school together. And there's, of course, the stereotypical, like, super type A, perfect student who is like kind of freaking out. Then there's one who is like the good-looking, popular guy, but of course he has all these like family secrets that he doesn't want everyone to know. And then there's a guy who kind of ended up being a little bit of a loner in high school. So they're all different, but they all decide to skip school together, and they end up finding one of their classmates dead. So not a good day. And so throughout the book, you are just kind of following the mystery. They are trying to figure out the mystery themselves because one of the people gets framed. And it is fun, like even as I'm talking about it, I like the concept of this story. I just wasn't really loving it as I was reading it. It was fine, just not one I would go out of my way to get. Alright, then we switched things up and I read The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson, and I actually kind of like tag teamed this book with Brandon Sanderson's The Alloy of Law, but I did end up finishing this one first, and I loved this book. I'm really trying to get more into reading nonfiction, especially nonfiction like this where I'm really learning a lot about another period in time. And this is my first book by this author Erik Larson, but I think all of his books are pretty popular, and he is praised for making his nonfiction books read very much like fiction. And I just felt like I learned so much during this book. I read pretty slowly just because there is a lot of information, as there often is in nonfiction, and I really just wanted to take it all in. This follows the 1893 World Fair, which was held in Chicago, and I feel like I knew that, but honestly, for how massive of a thing this was, I'm like, why didn't I learn about this in history class? Why don't we talk more about maybe some of these more positive moments in history? Not that everything was positive, because yeah, half of this book follows the creation of the World Fair and the World Fair itself and kind of the aftermath, and then the other half of the book, it jumps back and forth, follows a serial killer who kind of capitalized on the World Fair in order to draw victims in, but he was killing people before and after. And I saw some people criticized the author because they were like, it's 2 different books. It should have just either completely followed the World Fair or completely followed the serial killer, but they are very much tied together. And because both of these stories were in here, I was much more interested. And there's just so much in this book to be interested in, I think. Like, there's a lot of talk about architecture, which I do personally enjoy. Some of that could get a little bit weighty, but I loved that this book just had all the information. And of course, you're learning more about the time. Some very, very famous people were associated with the World Fair, either helping build it or they attended and they got a lot of inspiration from the fair. So I love this. I think this is a 5-star nonfiction read. I would highly recommend, again, especially if you like architecture, if you like big historical events in time. If you like this period, like the 1890s, early 1900s, if you like reading about serial killers, I am a psych person myself, so I think it's very fascinating to read about serial killers, and there's a lot of information about kind of this guy's psyche, which was disturbing. So sorry about rattling on about this one, but if you've been wanting to pick this up and you haven't yet, I would recommend it, and I am for sure going to be reading more from this author. Okay, second to last book, we have The Alloy of Law, and this is the first book in Mistborn Era 2. So if you're unfamiliar, Brandon Sanderson is a massively popular high fantasy author. He writes some really in-depth stories. He's definitely one of my husband's favorite authors, and I did read the Mistborn trilogy last year, and I very much enjoyed it. I wouldn't say high fantasy is my personal favorite, but those were 5-star books from me, so I've been very much wanting to dive into this Mistborn Era 2. And in this Era 2, Brandon Sanderson actually describes the books as a lot less deep, not necessarily deep, but like a lot quicker of an adventure, a little bit less like in the minds of the characters. This very much felt like a Wild West movie, so I really did like that, but there still are fantastical elements. So this is a pretty short book for Brandon Sanderson. Some of them can be very thick, and I would recommend them. Honestly, you could read this without reading Mistborn Era 1, but I think this series would spoil a lot of the original trilogy. But if you did read those first 3 books and you never got around to this one, I would recommend. It's a different vibe, but I really did enjoy it. And I did give this 4.5 stars. So a lot of books got 4.5. Couple disappointments, but I really did enjoy the month overall. And literally just half an hour ago, I did finish The Unmaking of June Farrow. So today is actually June 4th. Technically, I didn't finish this during May, but I just wanted to include it in this monthly wrap-up. This has been one that I've been really eager to read and just wanted to find the right time to pick it up, and I felt like I was in the mood for it. But honestly, even though this book is only 300-ish pages and a pretty quick read, it took me like a week to get through. It's been very crazy, obviously, as we've moved and just doing a lot of projects, and we've had people staying, preparing for other people to come, so that has kind of messed with the way that I read, which I think is part of the reason why I was in a bit of a reading slump. But I do think that this would be a great book to just binge read in one day. I definitely think it would be doable. And I did give it 4.5 stars. I was hoping for 5 stars before I went into it. I've seen some very positive reviews from other booktubers I follow, but ultimately I just found that all the twists were very predictable. And so yeah, even though I did really enjoy the story overall, there were parts that I was just like, okay, I know it's gonna happen, just like, let's get there. So that's the only reason it wasn't a perfect 5-star from me, but I did think it was well written, a very beautiful, fantastical love story, but also some mystery involved. And this author did also write the Fable duology, maybe trilogy, and I read the first one in that series, and I liked it, but I wasn't dying to read the next one. I still haven't read the second one, so I can absolutely say that I did prefer this book to Fable. But alright everybody, that was everything that I did read during the month of May. I am going to talk a little bit more about what I am hoping to read in June, what I'm expecting to read in June during my monthly reset, which will be the next video that goes out. But yeah, feeling some good literary fiction. But if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!